Great. Why don't we get started? Bismillah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Him, we praise Him, we glorify Him. We beseech Him to send His choicest salutations upon His most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and upon all those who choose to tread in His path until the last day. I believe we're now reaching our last session, alhamdulillah, and we've been looking at a text called the Book of Assistance by a sheikh named Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah. In the first class, we talked overall just about what spirituality means from the standpoint of Islam as a faith tradition, and how within our understanding in Islam, there's not a separation between religion and spirituality, but the two actually go hand in hand together. That the way that a body that has no soul to it is likened to a corpse, or is in fact a corpse, ritual that has no inner dimension to it also is similarly just as a corpse would be, has no life, no vitality. It needs that inward component. We then talked about the first chapter, which was on yaqeen, certitude. And then we looked last week at the second chapter, which was on niyyah, intention. And we're now moving into the third chapter, which is on vigilance or muraqabah. This idea that you look over your heart so that in turn your heart, it looks over you. That you have an engagement with that most precious part of your being that the Prophet ﷺ himself has said that if it is good, then everything will be good. And if it is not good, then everything will not be good. Indeed, it is the heart. And so we're looking at a text that's called the Book of Assistance. I'm going to put the PDF in the chat box for those who might not have it. If you want to pull it up and read along, inshallah, that would be great. We're going to be looking at the third chapter, which is on vigilance, muraqabah. And so Imam al-Haddad, rahimahullah, he starts by saying, "You must, O my brothers, be mindful of God in all of your movement and times of stillness. At every moment, with every blink of the eye, with every thought, wish, or any other state. Feel his nearness to you. Know that he looks and is aware of you, that nothing that you conceal is hidden from him. Nothing that weighs so much as an atom is hidden from your Lord, whether on earth or in heaven. When you speak aloud, he knows your secret thought and that which is even more hidden. He is with you wherever you are, with his knowledge, awareness, and power. If you are of the righteous, he will guide, assist, and protect you. Have modesty before your Lord as you should. Make sure that he never sees you in a situation which he has forbidden you, and never misses you where he has commanded you to be. Worship him as if you saw him, for even if you do not see him, he sees you. Wherever you notice in your soul any laziness in his worship or inclination to disobedience, remind it that God hears and sees you and knows your secrets and secret conversation. If this reminding does not benefit it because of the inadequacy of its knowledge of the majesty of God, remind it of the two noble angels who record good and evil deeds and recite to it. When the two receivers receive, sitting on the right and on the left, he utters no word, but there is with him a watcher ready. If this reminding does not influence it, remind it of the proximity of death, that it is the nearest of all hidden and awaited things. Frighten it of its sudden pouncing, whereby if it does come when it is in an unsatisfactory state, it will end up in endless perdition. If this threat is of no use, remind it of the immense reward which God has promised those who obey him. and the painful torment with which he has threatened those who disobey him. Say to it, O soul, after death there will be no opportunity to repent, and there will be after this life only the garden or the fire. Choose, if you will, obedience, the consequence of which is triumph, contentment, immortality in vast gardens, and looking at the face of God, the generous, the beneficent, or else disobedience, the consequence of which is degradation, humiliation, mockery, deprivation, and imprisonment between layers of fire. Endeavor to curb your soul with such reminders when it neglects obedience and inclines to rebellion, for they are endeavor to cure your soul with such reminders when it neglects obedience and inclines to rebellion, for they are useful medicines for the heart's disease. If you find emerging in your heart, when you call to mind the fact that God observes you, a shyness that prevents you from disobeying him and drives you to exert yourself in obeying him, you are in the possession of something of the realities of vigilance, muraqabah. Know that vigilance is one of the most noble stations, high positions, and lofty degrees. It is the station of excellence, ihsan, indicated in the Prophet's saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ihsan is to worship God as if you saw him, for if you do not see him, he sees you. Each believer has faith that nothing on earth or in heaven is concealed from God, that God is with him wherever he is, and that none of his movements or times of stillness are concealed from him. But the important thing is that this awareness be permanent and that its results appear, the least of which is that he does nothing when alone with God that he would be ashamed of should a man of virtue see him. This is rare, and it eventually leads to that which is rarer still, whereby the servant is totally immersed in God, annihilated in him, and thus rendered unaware of all else, absent from creation through his contemplation of the true king, having arrived at a secure seat in the presence of an able sovereign. And so here what Imam al-Haddad is giving us indication of is a need to recognize how our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal interacts with what the actual basis of our relationship with Allah. That we are not simply a body that worships God, but we are an entire entity, an entire being that has different facets to us that engages in a relationship with Allah. And if you remember, we said that what Imam al-Haddad is doing, rahimahullah, is giving us a roadmap, an outline through which we essentially will reach a goal, a destination of drawing closer to our conviction and certitude, our yaqeen, in all matters related to what this deen calls us towards. And so if we were to now start thinking about how this applies to where we're at in this moment, we had said that if our starting points were all distinct, meaning that we all have different points that we start from, even though we have an end point that we said was a common end, was incertitude, yaqeen. That this is where people want to end up. Regardless of whether you start from here, you start from here, you start from here, or you start from here, or from here, individuals are trying to get to this destination of chapter 1. And what we said was that in the beginning, regardless of what the steps are that you're taking, that the second chapter on niyyah, intention, was what we wanted to have with us in the frame of our taking steps in our pathway forward. And so now this next part on muraqabah, on vigilance over our hearts, is important, because where we get to be now in a space, we want to understand how it relates to this movement that we have going forward to get from intention to yaqeen, and then the subsequent chapters. So if you are going now in this direction and your starting point is here, you are moving in a set of steps that might take you up, they might take you back, they might take you forward. But at every single one of these points that you are moving, where if you can see, I'll make them darker circles. If there is a movement in change in direction that can signify a step that you're taking in some way, and especially in the starting point, what Imam al-Haddad is saying is that at every juncture, you want to engage in muraqabah. You want to be in a place where in these various components of steps that you are now individually taking, you understand these to be moments where you continue to assess and look at what is happening in your heart, that you're not leaving it behind, but you're engaged in a constant and consistent mode of recognition of, well, what's going on in here? What is happening in here with every movement? There's an assessment. There is a debrief to look at the process and see if it's actually bringing me towards what it is that I want it to bring me towards, or is it putting things in me that are not good for me? Or is it putting things in me that are really great for me? But the vigilance is such that it has this relationship. The heart is what will watch over you. But in order for it to watch over you, you have to watch over it. That there's a reciprocity to the relationship. And if you are not watching over it, then it is not going to watch over you. It will be in a sphere where the other elements that come into play of the nafs, the ego, that will dictate how you make your decisions. The dunya, the materialistic world, hawa, desire, lusts. And then we have waswasa, shaitan's whispers. May Allah protect us from these things. These will be the elements, the things that will come into a place of taking our attentiveness. And so the heart becomes a critical component, and being in a sphere where you watch over it so that it in turn watches over you. And Imam al-Haddad, he's giving us this insight from the very onset of the chapter, where he says right from line 1, "You must, O my brothers, be mindful of God in all of your movements and times of stillness, at every moment, with every blink of the eye, with every thought, wish, or any other state. Feel his nearness to you. Know that he looks and is aware of you, that nothing you conceal is hidden from him. Nothing that weighs so much as an atom is hidden from your Lord, whether on earth or in heaven. When you speak aloud, he knows your secret thought and that which is even more hidden. He is with you wherever you are, with his knowledge, awareness, and power. If you are of the righteous, he will guide, assist, and protect you." Now, here there's an opportunity to think about who that God is that you are connecting to, that you want to be mindful of Allah in all of your moments and times of stillness. And this assumes something that is very important to reflect upon, because it's giving us a process through which we relate to the heart, and it's telling us now of two broader categories that have to be implemented, that you have both movement and you have stillness. Moments of stillness are critical in the development of internal and inward understandings. That with modernity, there is so much growth, and we've talked about this a little bit over the last few weeks, as to how we can be interconnected, as to how we can be in spheres where all of us are in different places, right? If all of you were to write out in the chat box right now where it is that you are in this moment, what part of the world you're in, what part of the country that you're in, that connectivity and interconnectivity utilizing technology as a basis of us being together, even when we're physically separate, is remarkable. And modernity brings that to us as a technological advancement. But so too with modernity, there becomes a diminishing of spaces of stillness. And now this is key to understand as we are trying to understand what this thing of muraqabah is, because we don't want it to be something that is rooted purely in what is just on the tongue, but it wants to actually be in the heart. And so if we were to start writing out now principles that we can look at, one, movement and stillness, that you have to aspire towards having the recognition of Allah, that consciousness of Allah, when you're in motion and when you're also still. And so in motion, like when you're moving, you want to be present. Think about what this says, okay? If you are moving, you are going in a certain direction, you are taking steps, you are acting, you are being, you are doing. You want to, in your being and your doing, still have consciousness and awareness. This is where the chapters connect to each other, because when you affirm a niyyah before you move, you now can tell yourself whether you are doing this for God's sake or for something else, or if you engage within it in the framework of multiple intentions. Did anybody take a look at the book that I had recommended last time, the Book of Intentions? That we had talked about this concept of having multiple intentions embedded within an action. You get to a place where in motion, when you start going, it can be pretty hard to regather your thoughts. You know, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? Am I achieving what it was that I intended? To go now in a place that is not just raw instinct or just devoid of presence of one's mind and of one's heart, but to have it be there. And so in movement, to have consciousness, and in stillness. Now this second part of stillness is imperative to think out in the way that you build out your routine. And it would have been great if we had more time that we got to a chapter that you should look at that's on daily litanies, what we call the awrad, a wird, like a regular collection of adhkar, remembrance, Quranic recitations, other things that you would engage in. But the entire chapter revolves itself around a premise of time management, how you build into your schedule and routine things. I want you to take for a moment now an idea of where you build purposefully stillness into your routine. That where and how do you deliberately acquire moments where you are at peace with just silence and stillness? There's not movement, there's not motion, there's not, let me go to grab like a electronic apparatus to see who is calling me or reaching out to me with messages and texts and social media and all this kind of stuff, but just stillness, pure silence. Where would this space be for you? Where does this place exist that you can go to that creates for you an opportunity of just deep reflection, an opportunity to have contemplation, to really assess what's going on within me that I'm then bringing to the world that exists outside of me? And that will be subjective for you. That as long as it's not a place that brings harm to you or harm to someone else, nor is it a place that engages within the haram, right? May Allah protect us from it. Your places of stillness can be anything. You could sit in a room in your house and you could find within that space an opportunity for deep reflection and contemplation. You can find within it an opportunity for deep resonance of things that yield you opportunity to be away from distractions. But for 2 minutes right now, I want you to just within yourself, on whatever notebooks or whatever it is you take notes on, to just say, what are my places of stillness? Where do I go to find silence? And then write that out for yourself so that it's not something that we leave to chance, but you start the process of thinking about it. And so we take 2 minutes right now, and I'll put the question in the chat box. Where are your places of stillness? I think it went into ask a question. And if you don't have any, that's fine. It's not about having them right now, but thinking about it in the frame of even years ago. Where would you go to just find some place of stillness so that everything's not agitated and moving and constantly stimulated, right? Like, what do we mean by stillness? It means that there's not things that are making your mind go or things that are causing your body to go, right? Where are those places? And so take a couple of minutes, write to yourself. If you have some that you'd like to share, just as people are starting to write in the chat box for all of our benefit, that would be great. Put some of it in there, but we want to take just a quick 2 minutes to do that really quick. So it's 6:24 p.m. in New York City. So 6:26 p.m. we'll come back. Just 2 minutes. What are your places of stillness? Okay, let's see what are some of the things people came up with. In nature, the mosque, a bonus room in the house, the library, my car, in the basement, by the lake, prayer room, and in my car, bay window area at my house where my prayer rug is there, my car, a room not used frequently. Great. And so when you want to engage in these types of practices where there's a need for reflection, contemplation, your stillness inwardly is going to be impacted by a certain stillness existing externally as well. And so if you are surrounded by agitation, like you're consuming it, and that's going to make it hard. In some places, it's not easy to figure it out because of life responsibilities. There are families at home, you might have children, a lot of noise. The thing with stillness and engaging in this as a practice is that it doesn't have to be pursuant of like long periods of time necessarily, but you want it to be consistent periods of time and to not have a focal point on what is not, but what actually is, like what's there for you. What are you able to draw from that is there, as opposed to having a focus on what's not there, and rendering now negative framing as opposed to positive framing. So if you can find in your routine 10 minutes in a day that enables you to just be in places of silence and stillness, and to then want to take advantage of those moments, take advantage of it and capitalize on it for your own gain, so that your thoughts start to be less impacted by all kinds of noise and agitation that's taking place around you. Because that's what happens with us. We consume through not just our mouths and our food and drink, but we consume through our eyes, through our ears, through our touch, through all of our senses. And so that stillness has to be strategically understood, right? And you don't want it to be something that's intangible, that I live in Manhattan and the place I find stillness is sitting in front of the Kaaba. I can't go to the Kaaba every single day. Like, it's just not going to be possible. I live in New York City. I have to find things that are accessible. I have to find things that I can actually engage and achieve some moment of reflection within it. And there likely are things. The spaces themselves are going to be attached also to a consciousness of the time. So at some points in the day, for example, in New York City, there's a ton of noise going on. But those same spaces in my apartment can be fairly still and majestic just at different parts of the day. So where you can wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and the streets of New York City are completely empty in some parts of it. You can sit in a home and there's no noise outside in comparison to the noise that exists during the course of the day routinely, or in the later hours of the night before one goes to bed, or certain places that are not frequented at certain times of the day or the night because there's just not people there at those times. A space is not necessarily just about the actual physical space, but everything that kind of comes along with it. Environment, atmosphere, looking at it from a timing perspective, and then paying attention to yourself and recognizing that you yourself might respond to different things in different ways. So there's some of us who are morning people. Some of us are not morning people. We're nighttime people. We respond to the day and the night very differently. Some of us, when it's cold outside or it's longer nights than days, it impacts our mood. And this is fine. You just want to be conscious of it, because all of it is going to bleed itself into your moments of stillness. And so as Imam al-Haddad, he continues, he tells us now that these are things you need to have while you're moving and while you are in a place of stillness. You want to feel God's nearness to you. And this is meant to be in a positive framework, that Allah is there always. When you feel most alone, Allah is there. When you feel as if no one else is there, Allah is there. That He looks and is aware of you, and that there's nothing that you conceal that's hidden from Him. That you have with you a divine being, a divine entity that you want to build a relationship with. And what's critical to understand is in this second to last sentence, that it's with His knowledge, His awareness, and His power that He is connecting to you in this way. That Allah engages you based off of who He is, not off of who you and I are. So we don't want to anthropomorphize God in any capacity, and to not engage in theological debates of, does the hand of God mean a hand like this, and the chair of God mean a chair like the chair you're sitting in, but anthropomorphizing also in the framework of how we understand love, mercy, forgiveness to be, based off of the way people choose to love or not love us, or forgive or not forgive us, or even in fact seeing the way that we choose perhaps to be unforgiving or unloving or not kind or devoid of compassion. May Allah protect us from these things. But putting a determination on who Allah is based off of our actions and our choices and how we engage. Here, what we want to understand is that Allah is with us the way that He is because of who He is, not because of who we are. And we don't want to channel or reflect our experiences or our interactions with people around us to then dictate how we perceive God's interactions to be with us. Because laysa kamithlihi shay, that there's not anything that's like even a likeness to Him. And so what you would fathom of Allah's proximity to you is not something that should be understood in the framework of human proximity or human interaction, but it has to be something that yields to an idea that this is something that as we become to fathom it more, we recognize that it's beyond our capacity to truly rationalize what God's mercy is, what God's knowledge is, what God's power is. You just want to know and find comfort in it, that it's there and he is there for us, looking for a reason to accept from us. And that's the thing you want to carry with you in your heart in moments of motion as well as in stillness, to be in a place where it's creating for you this deep sense of positivity in your relationship with Allah, not a fear of God the way that you're scared of the dark or the scared of spiders or scared of these things, but a fear. When we talk about fear, it's about a reverence, it's about a deference and awesomeness. You want to find within that elements of hope and love as well, because there's positivity to the Prophet ﷺ's relationship with Allah, that there's elements to it that give him strength and energy, right? أَفَلَا كُونَ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا, should I not be a grateful servant? It has that mode of positivity in it that helps. And it ties now into this next section where Imam al-Haddad begins to talk about haya. He says, have modesty before your Lord as you should, right? Modesty is something that quite often we pit within the framework of gender. We look at it in terms of dress, headscarves, etc., how you cover your body. And that's fine. That's one way to look at it. But here is the definition of what haya actually is, that you make sure that he never sees you in a situation which he has forbidden you, and never misses you where he has commanded you to be, that you are in a sphere where you understand that haya is this. Haya is that you are aware of God. You have this consciousness of Allah. You have this state in your heart that you know of God's presence in such an acute manner that Allah is not going to ever see you in a place that he does not want you to be, nor will he find you outside of a place that you should be in. That's the definition of haya. Haya is not modesty at the only level of how you dress and the clothes you wear, or the way that we put it quite often in terms of a very gendered conversation. Haya has to deal with men and women, not only women. It definitely has not to do just with modes of dress and external dress, because look at the definition that Imam al-Haddad is giving to us, that modesty is about not being in the places that Allah does not want you to be, that God will not see you in the places that he has told you not to go, and that he will always see you in the places that he wants you to be in. So at the time of Fajr, you're praying Fajr, and Allah finds you praying Fajr rooted in haya, that you are not in a gathering that you know you should not be in because of this concept fundamentally, but it's rooted in a framework of positivity, that you have a love for God, you have such a deference towards God that because you're so close to him, Azza wa Jal, you don't want to do things that are going to disappoint him, to keep yourself away from him, because nearness and proximity is such that's already been identified. We already are told that God is close to us. So when there's movement away, it's not that the proximity now is impacted by the divine, but when somebody moves, it's going to be me who moves. I'm the one that's going to a distance, not anybody else, because Allah is not the one that is moving. You are. And the movement away stems from leaving some of these foundational elements of what the religion calls us towards, to be people who have awareness, to utilize our intellect, our capacity to think and to be in certain ways that enables us to then dig deep and say that this is a moment that does not inform just my immediate, but it informs my recognition of the akhirah. The way that I respond and behave is giving me insight truly as to who I perceive God to be, where God finds himself in the course of my decisions, as well as the idea that there is a world that is much bigger than this one down the line in store for me. And so he moves into this direction of talking about haya, so that we start to think about what this process of muraqabah is looking like. Have modesty before your Lord as you should. Make sure that he never sees you in a situation which he has forbidden you, and never misses you where he has commanded you to be. Worship him as if you saw him, for even if you do not see him, he sees you. Whenever you notice in your soul any laziness in his worship or inclination to disobedience, remind it that God hears and sees you and knows your secrets and secret conversations. So here now we can add to this haya. Just start. So step one, if you find laziness in it, he says, remind yourself of Allah. That if you get to a place where the problem comes in, you notice in your soul laziness in his worship or inclination to disobedience, meaning that you are not doing the fara'id or you are engaging in haram, then remind yourself that God hears and sees you and knows your secrets and secret conversation. So that's his first step. Let's do this. So if you find yourself in a state of laziness, step number one, remind your soul that Allah sees and hears you. Step number two, he says that if that doesn't work, if this reminding does not benefit it because of the inadequacy of its knowledge of the majesty of God, remind it of the two noble angels who record good and evil deeds. And so in this now, there's two things. One, he's saying that fundamentally, you need to increase your knowledge of Allah. And then two, remind yourself that there are angels on your shoulders, right, that are writing down all of these things. But that knowing of God can be a very deliberate process of knowledge acquisition, that you are asking of Allah, you are turning to Allah, but you need to learn and read. Who does Allah say that he is? How are you understanding in the deepening of your own knowledge base so that that first step actually resonates better? It's starting with the ideal and then taking steps backwards. In it, he also says that you just remember there's angels that are with you, right? Inna alaykum lahafidhin, that upon you there are two preservers, guardians, kiraman katibin, right? Elevated and writing. Ya'lamuna ma taf'alun, they know what it is that you do. So they're watching, they're mindful of it. You can find psychological studies that are fascinating of people who are put into rooms and they know cameras are on them, watching them, and they're even told this is happening. And their mindfulness becomes so limited as they tap into more their own animalistic senses that they slowly stop caring about the camera being on them. And they engage in behaviors that just you wouldn't imagine somebody doing if they knew that somebody was watching them. But here, this is what Imam al-Haddad's argument is, that you want to remember that like Allah is there. If you can't find something there, then recognize that you need to deepen in your knowing of him and tell yourself, aside from God being there are angels that are there that are witnessing what it is that you do, that are seeing these actions that you're undertaking. If this reminding does not influence it, remind it of the proximity of death, that is the nearest of all hidden and awaiting things. And so if you still are not in a place, then you start to reflect upon the reality of death. But this is spiritual exercise, right? This is meant to be a spiritual exercise. It's not meant to be something that is morbid, that you take from it what it offers to you by recognizing that your time in this world is limited and there's going to be a much bigger world in store for you that comes after this world. And you need to be in a space where you're mindful of it. Apologize for the movements that I'm taking. I'm having some nerve issues in the left side of my body here in my back. And I need to stretch every so often. This is why I have these pillows behind me. Usually I don't, but forgive me if my movements are distracting in any way. It's much better than it was, alhamdulillah, but it came pretty unexpectedly in the last few days. It's been causing a lot of pain, but it's getting better, alhamdulillah. But I'm sorry if it's distracting. I mean, jazakallah khair for the du'as. So what you want to think about is this as a process. Imam al-Haddad is saying that if step 1 doesn't work, go to step 2. Step 2 doesn't work, go to step 3. And you use it as a matter of process. Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, he has a letter that he writes that I think we might have spoken about in this program at some point, but if not, just as a reminder, that he talks about the expansion of the chest, right? The way Musa alayhi salam makes the dua, Rabbi shrah li sadri, that Allah expand my chest. The Shahr Sadr that Imam al-Ghazali writes a letter about, the expansion of the chest, that letter that he labels by that title is just a letter that's on a reflection of death, because they see it as a means of spiritual increase, to look at death as a reality that is simply the means through which one passes from this world into the next, and not as a means through which one is somehow limiting themselves in not recognizing their own mortality. I'm sorry, I know we're going through this a little slow, so we'll kind of move a little quicker. And then he says, if this threat is of no use, remind it of the immense reward which God has promised those who obey him, and the painful torment which he has threatened those who disobey him. And so you then take as step 4, reflections on heaven and hell. Say to it, O soul, after death there will be no opportunity to repent, and there will be after this life only the garden or the fire. This is a reality that you want to bring into your own frame of consciousness. That do you believe in the existence of an afterlife, and do you understand as best as you can what it means for something to be forever, eternally, that it doesn't have a stop to it, that this is where existence moves itself towards. Choose, if you will, obedience, the consequence of which is triumph, contentment, immortality, and vast gardens, and looking at the face of God, the generous, the beneficent, or else disobedience, the consequence of which is degradation, humiliation, mockery, deprivation, and imprisonment between layers of fire. Endeavor to cure your soul with such reminders when it neglects obedience and inclines to rebellion, for they are useful medicines for the heart's disease. Of the words that he uses, the most important there is to understand the choice. He's saying that you and I, we choose whether to be obedient or we choose whether to be disobedient. And this is in the Quran over and over again. We see it in so many verses, especially in the shorter chapters towards the end of the Mus'haf, that you have so much that indicates that there is the capacity to be a being that moves in the direction of what is good or in the direction of what is not good, towards things that have benefit or things that have detriment, obedience, disobedience. But the choice, the choosing of it, is for you and I. We play that conscious mode of decision making. In matters that we are forced into or compelled into, then that's not things that we're taking into account, the Quran tells us and teaches us. But outside of those moments, we play a definitive role. You choose your actions. You choose your decisions. You choose to be obedient or disobedient, is what it's saying. It's not that it's just a flip of a switch on and off. But once you choose that you don't want to engage in the haram, you then choose like strategy, because it's not as simple as I'm going to just stop doing the bad things that I do, but I have to have a plan to start to filter it out and deconstruct habits. And this is where a disconnect comes in and people get frustrated that we're not a deen that we just raise our hands to the skies and faith pours into us and we suddenly transform into something totally different. But if you have an action that you've done so often that it now becomes a regular part of you, you have to have the patience to bring it out and break it out also in a systemic way. But the first step in that is to choose that I don't want this to be a part of me anymore. I don't want this to exist within me. And then I'm going to take the steps, bring in the resources, the support mechanisms, the individuals that will help me to ensure that this doesn't stay with me in the way that it has been staying with me. If you find emerging in your heart, when you call to mind the fact that God observes you, a shyness that prevents you from disobeying him and drives you to exert yourself in obeying him, you are in possession of something of the realities of vigilance, muraqabah. Know that vigilance is one of the most noble stations, high positions, and lofty degrees. It is the station of excellence, ihsan, indicated in the Prophet saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that ihsan is to worship Allah as if you see him, for if you do not see him, he sees you. That each believer has faith and nothing on earth or in heaven is concealed from God, that God is with him wherever he is, and that none of his movements or times of stillness are concealed from him. But the important thing is that this awareness be permanent and that its results appear, the least of which is that he does nothing when alone with God that he would be ashamed of should a man of virtue see him. So here is the bare minimum, that when you are alone, that there are no one else's eyes other than Allah's eyes on you, that's giving you an indication now as to where you're at. Because there are acts that are done in public, acts that are done in private, and acts that are done in secret. And if you want an indication of who you are as an individual, don't look at who you are when you are surrounded by so many people, but look at who you are when nobody else is there. And it's only Allah's eyes that are upon you. That nobody else is there with you. Nobody else is there watching and seeing. It'll give you an indication of who it is that you are in those moments. That those secret acts that we are taught of to engage in, they have a lot of benefit for us in different ways. But in the context of this chapter, it's going to tell you what the state of your heart is. And it's not in the framing of just good and bad and right and wrong, but you start to get an insight as to who you are. And you can then start to promote and pitch what it is that you want to be. He translates muraqabah as vigilance, and you want to look at your heart as what that is. Because when you stand vigil, when you are ever vigilant, when somebody is there, they are in a space where they are ensuring that no harm is coming to you. Right? We talk about in historical times people in armies would stand vigilant soldiers at the outer posts of cities and towns so that no harm would come to befall any of the people within it. The way you have animals that might protect your home at night, dogs and other things that guard and protect you from predators, they are ever vigilant. He's saying that that's what you want your heart to be. You want your heart to be what is vigilant, what is there as that guard, that protector, that soldier, that thing that watches over you. And the way that you do that is by watching over it. You nourish it, you cultivate it, you craft for it gain and increase. How do you do that? You don't just feed your body. You nourish yourself in your heart, in your soul. You take into consideration so many different things that become imperative to start to look at. And you think deeply about what it is that's going on within you. But your fasting is a shield. The Prophet ﷺ says, as-sawmu junnah. Your recitation of Quran, your company that you keep, what you eat, how much you eat, the quality of what you eat, your muhasabah, your self-reckoning, your accounting on a regular basis, your solitude, your reflection, your contemplation, your engagement of good deeds and good actions, serving Allah by serving His creation, being in a place where you recognize your own beauty and what it is that you can offer by sharing with others in their time of need. All of these are things that are going to be good for your heart. And the things that are terrible for your heart are the engagement of haram. May Allah protect us from it. And those fundamental things are what we have to come back to, but not in an elementary way. You don't want to push back and say that I'm not bad. Who are you to judge me? You're not bad. You're good. But even a good person can be better. And there's not anybody who could say that they don't engage in things that are haram. May Allah protect us from it. But the consequence is that that haram then yields darkness on one's heart, spiritual heart. There's not going to be benefit in doing the haram. It'll give you complacency, but the gratification you get in the immediate will come with a long-term consequence. And you don't want to have a long-term consequence. And so I thought that we could end with a short dua, given that this is our last session together. Somebody had asked a question on, can I make up my missing fasts on Mondays and Thursdays? Yeah, so if you have fasts that you have to make up, in Shawwal, there are the 6 fasts that we're taught about making in the hadith, that if you were to fast the 6 fasts of Shawwal and the fast of Ramadan, it would be as if you fasted the whole year. And there's different opinions on whether you have to fast them all consecutively or you can break them up. Allah knows best. My teachers have said that you can have dual intentions to your fast. So you can make up fasts as well as observe recommended fasts within the same fast. And they would count as both. Allah knows best. But you should, if you are able to, and you have the physical ability to fast, you want to keep fasting outside of Ramadan. You don't want to be in a place where your fasting stops at Ramadan, but you keep going with it. You keep moving with your fast. Anybody who is serious about their spirituality, they would adopt a regular fast in the course of their spiritual exercise as a way to ensure that they had growth. Because really so much of what we do is attached to what we consume and how much we consume and how often we're consuming. And so if you have the means to continue in your fasting, please do keep fasting and make it a regular habit for yourself. Inshallah ta'ala, there'll be benefit in it for you. So just as we close, I would ask if you join me in making a short dua. And again, just as a reminder, as I've said before, please do support the Miftaah Institute. They have amazing programs that they do. If you haven't already, please do consider donating to them. You can go to their website, miftah.org/donate, and choose an amount as a one-time, monthly, or annual giver to their programs. They also have this sustainer program that they have where they're trying to get to 1,000 regular donors for their efforts in their programming. So where you can be helpful with that, please do. This book that we've been looking at, the Book of Assistance, I'd recommend continuing to read it and taking a look at it. This chapter, chapter 5, was the one that I was speaking on regular devotions, what we call the awrad, a wird. And the chapter that comes in between is very important also on the inner self and the outer self. But you should keep reading the book and engaging in interaction with it so that you are able to still benefit from it and take from it, inshallah, as much as you can. But if I can be helpful in anything you all have going on, just before we make dua, please don't hesitate in reaching out. I'd be happy to help in whatever way possible. And it would be great to maintain connection, inshallah, beyond just these moments that we've had over the last few weeks. But if you all want to take a minute to just recenter yourself as we make dua together, and recentering meaning that remove yourself from any distractions, remove yourself from anything that might be taking you to a different place, and just know that you are exactly where it is that you're supposed to be. And that, inshallah ta'ala, from our collective, in the presence of you all who are righteous and sincere, our dua will be elevated, and we will benefit from everything that we've been able to take from the various teachers and scholars, shuyukh, who have shared as a part of this program over the last few weeks. May Allah preserve and increase them. But please recenter yourself if you can as we make dua together. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma laka alhamdu kama yanbaghi liwajhika wa azim sultanik. لك الحمد حمدا طاهرا طيبا مباركا فيه ليوم الدين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Ya Allah, Ya Hakim, Ya Ahkam al-Hakimin, most wise of those who have wisdom, increase us in all that is good as we end this day. You who are the source of life, of truth, of sustenance and love, we turn to you in pursuit of true knowledge and understanding. Make us from the wise and those who seek out only wisdom. Grant us contentment that only wisdom can, a contentment that escapes so many. Thank you for all those you have placed in our lives who have spoken words of truth, love, and wisdom to us, even when we didn't want to hear it. Grant us the wisdom to know when you are using someone to speak instruction into our hearts, and the strength and courage to follow through with that guidance even when it is difficult. Grant us wisdom that does not lead us simply to wealth in the world, but leads us to real love and real understanding. In our pursuit of knowledge, make us those who find that which our hearts are in need of, and guide us always as we travel this world with an ever-increasing thirst for real truth. It is usually the ignorant who believe they always know, the unaware who think they understand. Make us those who are always in pursuit of growth, and never satisfied with where we currently stand. Make us those who always think before we speak and take the time to learn about the things that our minds think about. Make us those who are wise enough to say, I don't know, when we don't, and keep us from ever becoming those who have an answer, a thought, or opinion on everything. Make us those who increase in our wisdom through sound reflection and contemplation, and keep us from becoming those who only gain understanding through experience. Grant us a deep control over our emotions, and never let us become those whose anger overpowers our intelligence. To know others is intelligence, but to know ourselves is hikmah, real wisdom. To exert control over others is a sign of strength, but to be able to control ourselves is real power. Make us from the strongest of the believers, and let us never be those who gain the world at the expense of losing our souls. As these men and women leave from this course, this program, by the Miftaah Institute, grant them strength of all kinds, put barakah in all of their studies, and grant them success in each of their endeavors. Put into their beings a desire for nothing less than true excellence, and to push themselves to try their very best. Let each of them excel at all that they do, and with each success in this world, grant them more success in regards to the world beyond this one. Make them those who only act with knowledge, and to never leave any knowledge that they have been given unacted upon. Show them how to use it with wisdom, to use it to bring benefit to this world and all those who are in it, and to be a means of benefit for them in the world beyond this one. Help them to use what they have learned, the skills that they have acquired, and the relationships that they have built to make this world a little better in ways that only they uniquely can. Help them to look forward and let their foresight be rooted in courage and never fear. Let them meet the future with hope and make them the hope that we need for our futures to be filled with love, life, and light. Send them only those who will be their helpers and supporters, and protect them from any harm or tribulation, any affliction, anxiety, or anguish of any kind. Make them those who are never afraid to dream. Give them inspiration to work towards achieving each of their heart's aspirations, to find strength through service and success in each failure. Increase them in knowledge that is beneficial, and protect them from that knowledge that does not benefit us or any of those who are around us. Help them to deepen in their beneficial knowing, to know their strengths and to live by them, to know their character and how to increase it. Never let them feel any pain, but if they do, then help them to know how to heal from it, to know their value and how to share it, to know their blessings and how to be grateful for them, to know their wants and see where they conflict with their needs, to know their shortcomings and how to confront and defeat them, to know how to really forgive all those who have wronged them and actually forgive them, to know how to seek forgiveness from those that they have wronged and to then go out and seek it, to know what charity is by being generous with their wealth and their time, to know what integrity is by being honest and truthful, and to know what goodness is by extending their hands without qualification to all those who are in need. Help them to know who it is that they are and not let the people they are today be afraid ever to meet the people they can be tomorrow. Help them to truly know themselves better each day that they are in this world, and through that understanding to better themselves in the knowing of you and your mercy, Ya Allah, to know you and your love. Perfect them inwardly and to always be in control of their hearts. Make them from amongst those who live with true contentment every day of their lives, and grant them an abode in the place of ultimate contentment in the world beyond this one. Allow for their beings to always be filled with self-love so they might go out and share that love with others, rather than a love of themselves that keeps them from being everything that they are able to be. When their hearts are heavy and they are filled with darkness, bring people to them who illuminate them through kindness, compassion, and love. Make them always the reason that people have hope in this world, and never the reason that people might dread it. Make them those who use their strength, their power, their sheer will and determination to break down the walls of inequity, injustice, and oppression that confine so many today. Help them to truly be those who come together on principles of truth, patience, and mercy, so that they can do for others what they have the ability to do. Inspire them to build the shelters and clinics that their neighbors are in need of. Inspire them to take in the orphans and children that the world has forgotten. Inspire them to be generous and honest, people of integrity and sound character. Inspire them to live their Islam in such a way that it brings benefit to all those who are around them and uplifts every day the hearts that beat deeply within each one of them. Help them to see this world always through hearts that are drawn towards goodness, to see the goodness in all those who are around them, and to never be those who elevate themselves by denigrating others, to see the benefit in any challenge that comes their way, and to not pass on a gift that can only be acquired through patience and perseverance. Help them to silence fear and abolish anxiety, to overpower indifference and break away from greed, to eliminate arrogance and defeat racism, to be bold enough to ask of you to make them those who only do that which is good. Make them those who find real peace and real love, and not just the semblance of it. Those who give real peace and real love, and not just the facade of it. Make their motivation always selflessness, not selfishness, sincerity, and never self-centeredness. Help them to sustain the lessons learned through this course and program, and share what they have learned with all those that they will meet. Give them confidence that helps them to see their strengths as well as their weaknesses, and protect them from arrogance, which lets them only see weakness in the world around them. Give them the courage to reach their potential, and protect them from the fear that keeps them from doing so. Let their growth be gradual and consistent, and help them to strive every day, even if it is very little. Enrich their lives with the richness of their souls. Grant them companionship that helps them to reach their best, and keep them from companions who hold them back. Grant them friends who encourage them towards all that is good, and keep them from friends who take them towards that which is not. Arrange their hearts with those hearts that are gentle and tender, and make them amongst those whose presence brings benefit and relief. Make the Quran their guide, and grant them a deep understanding of it. Make the Sunnah their goal, both inward and outward aspects of it, and make their prayer their anchor, granting them the true sweetness that salah and dua only can. Make the best of their deeds the last of their deeds, and let them not leave this world other than in a state that is most pleasing to you. We turn to you, Ya Allah, in this blessed month of Ramadan. We turn to you, Ya Allah, and beseech you, invoke you through its barakah to accept our dua. Ya Allah, 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 by the presence of the righteous that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the sincerity of the most sincere that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the barakah of this blessed month that we are in, accept our dua. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you all. Inshallah ta'ala, if there was benefit in it, then please know that that's only from God, from Allah alone. And if there was anything that was problematic or anything that was not beneficial, then I would seek your forgiveness from that. But please do remain in touch, and where you can, support the Miftaah Institute in all of their endeavors, and keep them, the shuyukh there, the staff there, their entire team in your prayers, that may Allah increase them and make them a source of good. But I pray that the remaining days and moments of Ramadan are a blessing and benefit for you and your loved ones, that Allah accepts from you all of the actions that you have undertaken within it thus far, that He makes this month of Ramadan an experience that stays with you as a beneficial way through all of your remaining days in this world, and makes it a means through which you are guided and led to the best of places in the world beyond this one. But please do keep me in your prayers. You and your loved ones will be in mine. May Allah accept from all of us. Wallahu ta'ala alam wa billahi tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.